When a billionaire's daughter marries a humble farm boy against everyone's warnings, she discovers the cost of loyalty, the pain of betrayal, and a love no one saw coming. Before starting the story, where in the world are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear. Let's just say no one saw that ending coming. I still remember the first time I saw Jake. I was in a silk dress that cost more than most people's rent. He was in flannel and mud-caked boots, hauling hay behind the stables during one of my father's charity galas. People didn't even notice him, except me. His eyes didn't flinch when they met mine. There was something raw there, and tame. And for the first time in my perfectly polished life, something stirred. I was born into a world of polished speeches and practiced smiles. Jake looked like he hadn't rehearsed a single moment of his life. He wasn't supposed to be at that party. I wasn't supposed to talk to him. But that night, under a sky full of stars, we did more than talk. We sparked something dangerous. Something that didn't care about class, money, or last names. People say love hits like lightning. But with Jake it wasn't sudden, it was steady. And I was walking right into the storm, stilettos be damned. We weren't supposed to meet again. But I made sure we did. I started running into Jake at the farmer's market, pretending I knew what sweet corn was supposed to look like. He always smirked when he saw me, like he knew I didn't belong, but that I wanted to. He never asked why a billionaire's daughter was buying eggs from a stall instead of Whole Foods. And I never asked why his hands were always nicked, bruised, and dirty. But one day he touched mine. Just for a second while passing a carton. And it felt grounding. Like for the first time in my life, I wasn't floating above the world. I was in it. That summer we stole hours like teenagers in a Netflix film. Dirt roads, old pickup trucks, barefoot lake swims. I didn't post any of it online. This love wasn't for show, it was for me. But the closer I got to Jake, the louder the world got. Whispers behind manicured hands. Texts from friends. And soon my father found out. The night of my engagement party to someone else, I danced with Jake. That sounds scandalous, doesn't it? And maybe it was. But when your father controls every detail of your life, rebellion starts small. A glance, a smirk, a dance. I hadn't said yes to the ring yet. But the world already treated me like I had. The son of a foreign investor was my perfect match. My father called it a merger. Called it a cage. Jake showed up uninvited. He was helping valet the cars. He was supposed to stay out of sight. But I saw him. And before I could stop myself, I pulled him into the ballroom. Everyone turned. My future fiancé looked like I'd slapped him. I didn't care. Jake held me like I wasn't porcelain. We danced to one slow, old song while my future burned quietly behind us. I think that's the night I realized. I wasn't in love with Jake because he was different. I was in love with him because he reminded me who I was, before the world tried to own me. The next morning my father sat me down. No soft words. No gentle warnings. Just a list of consequences typed neatly on letterhead. If I walked away from my future, I'd lose the trust fund, penthouse, the security detail. Even my mother's jewelry would be locked in a vault I'd never see again. And Jake? He's nothing, my father said. A distraction. That's when I knew he wasn't just trying to control me. He was trying to erase me. I didn't cry. He nodded, walked upstairs, packed one bag. I left behind 22 years of privilege, my mother's pearls, and a life of easy yes. When I showed up at Jake's farm, I had no plan. Just a suitcase and a heartbeat. He didn't ask questions. He didn't say, "Are you sure?" He just held the screen door open and said, "Took you long enough." That was the moment I realized. I hadn't just chosen love. Chosen war. That first night in Jake's world, I cried into a second-hand pillow. Not because I missed the money. I didn't. but because walking away from my family felt like burying a piece of myself. The farm was quiet. Too quiet. No engines humming. No housekeepers clinking glasses in the background. Just crickets. Dirt roads. Silence. Jake didn't hover. He just handed me a warm mug of cocoa and sat beside me on the porch, staring into the darkness like it had answers. "Regret it yet?" he asked. I shook my head. I did a little. But I wouldn't admit it. Not yet. Instead I asked, "Do you even know how to dance in a ballroom?" He grinned. "No, but I can make you forget it exists." And somehow, with just those words, he did. He made me forget the ballroom. The legacy. The fake smile I wore for 2 decades. And as I leaned into his shoulder, one truth settled into my chest. I may have walked away from everything I knew, but I was finally stepping into something real. We didn't have much. The barn roof leaked, the porch creaked, and half the plumbing growled like a bear every morning. But we had freedom. And Jake. He worked like a man possessed. Up at dawn, hands in the dirt, fixing fences, chasing dreams. I traded my designer heels for boots I still didn't know how to lace. My hands blistered, my hair was always frizzy, but I laughed more in those early months than I had my entire life. We made grilled cheese on a gas stove and slow danced to static on the radio. He called me city girl with a smirk, but he loved teaching me his world. Still, not everyone was thrilled. The townsfolk saw me as some rich girl playing house. And his friends. They didn't trust me. I was the billionaire's daughter, even without a dime to my name. I told myself it didn't matter, that love was louder than gossip. But whispers have a way of growing sharp teeth when you pretend not to hear them. I thought leaving behind my last name would free me, but it followed me like perfume. One morning, a headline popped up on my old college friend's feed. "Heiress leaves fortune for farmhand. Rebellion or breakdown." I hadn't even told anyone where I was. They must have dug through Jake's socials, tagged photos from years ago. The vultures found us. Jake tried to laugh it off. "Hey, I made the news," he joked, pretending it didn't sting. But I saw the way his shoulders tightened when people stared too long at the diner. I heard the waitress whispering, "Poor guy," behind the counter. We became a story, a novelty. People didn't see us. They saw irony. The billionaire's daughter milking cows. The farm boy trying to fill billionaire shoes. I caught Jake one night outside, kicking a busted water trough. "They'll never let you forget what you gave up," he muttered. And that's when I knew. He wasn't just angry at them. He was starting to believe he'd stolen something he could never repay. I wasn't naive. I knew Jake felt the weight of my past like a ghost hovering in our tiny bedroom. But what he didn't understand was, I didn't choose him despite his simple life. I chose him because of it. Because he fought for things most people bought. Because when he held me, it wasn't about image or power. It was about truth. So I reminded him. Got up early. Learned how to drive the rusty old tractor, even though I nearly sent it into a ditch. Painted that sagging barn white with my bare hands. I wasn't proving it to the town. I was proving it to him. One night, I handed him a tiny box. Inside was a ring I had made from one of my old mother's earrings. "You gave me your name," I said. "Now let me give you something that's ours." He didn't say a word, just pulled me in and kissed me like the world had finally shut up. That night we didn't just share a bed. We shared a battle cry. If you ever want to know what love looks like, watch someone build something with their bare hands for you. That summer, Jake started turning the land behind the barn into a guest house. "For your dream studio," he said. I never even told him I wanted one. He just knew. Day by day, I watched him pour concrete, cut beams, lay brick. Every callus on his hand felt like a love letter. We had nothing fancy, just vision. But that was everything. We'd fall asleep to crickets and hammer dust. and wake to the smell of sawdust and cinnamon toast. I started documenting it all in a journal, hoping one day our kids could read it. "Your daddy built this with dreams and drywall," I'd say. It was perfect. Until it wasn't. One evening Jake was late. Then later. Then silent. His phone went to voicemail. I sat on the porch steps till the moon gave up on me. And I felt it, that slow, creeping sense that something was about to break. And maybe it already had. Midnight turned to 2 a.m. My mind raced. What if he got hurt? What if he was in a ditch somewhere? What if he didn't want to come home? That last thought chilled me. Because sometimes silence isn't an accident. It's a message. At 3:12 a.m., he finally walked in. Dirty. Exhausted. Distant. I asked where he'd been. He said he was helping a neighbor fix a tractor. But his voice had cracks. Not lies, but things unsaid. I didn't push. Not that night. But something shifted. His hugs grew shorter. His eyes flickered elsewhere when we talked. And in the following days, I found little things. Credit card I didn't recognize. A gas receipt from a town 2 hours away. I told myself not to spiral. But when someone's already broken your world once, your heart becomes a detective. I didn't know it yet, but the betrayal was planted. Quietly. Carefully. Like weeds beneath fresh soil. And when it bloomed, it would tear everything we built from the inside out. I wanted to believe Jake. I wanted to trust the man who built a house for my dreams. But lies, even small ones, leave fingerprints. He was disappearing more often, claiming odd jobs, helping neighbors I'd never met. Then one morning I found something in the back of his truck. A velvet box. Not the ring I'd seen that. This was different. Necklace. Diamond. Elegant. The kind of thing you don't give your farm girl wife. My stomach twisted. He came in whistling, kissed my cheek, and poured coffee like nothing was wrong. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. So I followed him the next day. I shouldn't have. But I did. He drove 2 towns over. Parked near a cafe. And met her. A woman in red heels. Her hand brushed his shoulder like they'd done it 100 times. I stood behind tinted glass, watching my world turn sideways. He smiled at her the way he used to smile at me. I wasn't just watching betrayal. I was watching the slow death of everything I gave up my life for. I didn't confront him that night. Or the next. I wanted to see how long he'd pretend. And he did beautifully. Kisses. Yours. Laughter at dinner. Performance. Like I hadn't seen him tuck another woman's hair behind her ear. Kept playing my part too. Until it shattered. One morning I held up the necklace and asked, "Who's this for?" His face went blank, then guilty. The worst kind. The kind that says you're not crazy. He didn't even deny it. Just sat down and said, "It's not what you think." But it was. Worse maybe. It had been going on for months. A woman he met through a construction supplier. Said he didn't plan it. Said he felt small next to my past. That being loved by someone like her made him feel powerful. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't about lust. It was about resentment. Jake didn't just betray me. He blamed me. For the world I left. For the life he wasn't sure he could fill. And somehow I was the one paying the price for his insecurity. I left the house that day with nothing but my journal. No plan. No address. Just rage and heartbreak. I didn't go back to my father. Not yet. I crashed with a friend who still answered my calls. But the press found me fast. Only now, the headlines weren't romantic. They were brutal. Billionaire heiress burns fortune for cheater farm boy. Now left with nothing. The media had a field day. They called me naive, impulsive, delusional. Jake. He became a symbol. The underdog who couldn't live up to a fairy tale. People debated my life like it was a tabloid plot twist. I didn't answer any interviews. I didn't explain. I just stared at that guest house we built in photos on my phone. Unfinished, lonely. What hurt most wasn't the betrayal. It was the idea that people thought they knew me. That they laughed. That they turned my loyalty into a punchline. I gave up wealth for love. And somehow the world decided that made me stupid. But they didn't know the ending. Not yet. 3 weeks passed. I didn't cry anymore, I burned. My friend offered to take me to a local fundraiser. Just get out of the house, she said. I almost didn't go. But that's where I met Ethan. A quiet architect who stood in the corner, sketching buildings on cocktail napkins. We started talking. He didn't ask about my past. He didn't recognize me, or pretended not to. Either way, I was grateful. We talked about barns. About rebuilding. About starting from things that once fell apart. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. But it was steady. He made me laugh, really laugh. I told him about my dream studio. The unfinished one I'd left behind. He smiled and said, "Dreams don't die just because people disappoint us." Before I left, he handed me his sketch of a guest house. It looked like mine but stronger. Reinforced. "If you ever want to build it right," he said, "call me." I tucked it into my purse. That night, I stared at my old wedding ring. I didn't want revenge. I wanted redemption. When you lose everything, money, pride, love, you either break or you rise. Chose the latter. I didn't go back to my father. I didn't run to Ethan. I ran to me. I got a job writing. Freelancing. Using the journal I'd filled during our farm life as fuel. My first essay. What I learned about love on a broken porch. It went viral. Suddenly, I wasn't the girl who left for a farm. I was the woman who survived one. Offers poured in, podcasts, features, even a book deal. But I didn't say yes to any of it until I was sure I'd written my story. Not Jake's. Not my dad's. I started saving again. And called Ethan. "Let's build it," I said. "The studio. But this time, it's mine alone." He didn't ask questions. He just said, "I'll bring the blueprints." Brick by brick, my life was being rebuilt. Not with a man. Not for approval. But for me. And this time the foundation wasn't love. It was power. He called me out of nowhere, my father. His voice was sharp as ever, but there was something new in it. Respect. "Your article made quite a stir," he said. "People are asking for rights. Film rights." He offered to bankroll my next steps, even said the words I thought I'd never hear. I was wrong about him. But I didn't need his money. Had my own now. What I needed was to hear it. Not about Jake, but about me. That I was worth something without his conditions. "You walked away with nothing," he said. "And turned it into a platform. That's not nothing." It wasn't an apology. But it was an admission. And that's when I knew. I wasn't his pawn anymore. I wasn't Jake's either. I'd become the queen of my own board. I didn't take my father's offer. I sent him a copy of my manuscript instead. Let the man who once bought everything learn to read what real legacy looked like. One earned, not inherited. I hadn't seen him in months. And then one day he was standing on the sidewalk outside my new office. Same flannel shirt. Same boots. Only this time they didn't look romantic. They looked tired. "I read your story," he said. "Didn't think I'd make it past chapter 3. I didn't say anything. I let him talk. He told me she left him. That the woman in the cafe wanted the idea of him. Not the man. He told me the farm wasn't the same without me. That he'd been trying to fix something in himself by breaking what we had. And he was sorry. Truly sorry. He asked if I wanted to come back. Not as a wife, but even as a friend. I looked at the man I once gave up everything for. The man who couldn't handle the weight of being loved. And I realized I had no hate left in me. Just distance. You were the start of my story, Jake, I said. But not the ending. I did go back to the farm. Once. Not for Jake. For closure. The barn was half-rotted. Our guest house unfinished. Overtaken by vines. But I wasn't sad. I walked through it like an old museum. Touched the table where we once played cards. The windows we painted shut by accident. Then I left a note on the porch. Thank you for the beginning. And I walked away. For good. 2 months later, I stood under a new roof. A finished one. Ethan had helped me build it. My studio. My space. Not tied to anyone's legacy or last name. And in it, I began filming a new series. Women Who Rebuilt. Stories like mine. Hard. Beautiful. True. We didn't renew our vows. We wrote new ones to ourselves. Ethan and I. We weren't in a romance yet. Maybe someday. Maybe never. But I was finally whole. So anything after that could only add. Not fix. And that was real power. The media tried to paint Jake as a fool. Then a villain. Then a tragic lesson. But I didn't let them. I didn't write him as a monster. I wrote him as a man. Flawed. Wounded. Human. Because healing doesn't come from revenge. It comes from truth. And truth is never black and white. My book topped list. My podcast got picked up. My father's name opened fewer doors than mine now. And somewhere in a dusty barn, I hope Jake finds peace. 'Cause he was never my enemy. He was just the storm I had to survive to discover the sky. And maybe, in some strange poetic way, he saved me. Just not the way he thought he would. He showed me what I didn't want, so I could build what I truly needed. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Loyalty isn't about staying when someone breaks you. It's about knowing when to walk away to save yourself. Jake didn't destroy me, he revealed me. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the girl who stepped off marble floors and into muddy boots. Of the woman who left a man who couldn't rise with her. And of the soul who turned heartache into a lighthouse for others. I'm not the billionaire's daughter. I'm not the farm boy's wife. Me. Standing tall. Loved. Respected. Whole. And I finally understand. Love isn't luxury or fairy tales or saving someone. It's choosing someone who never asks you to shrink. And if you can't find that kind of love in another, find it in yourself. That's the one that never leaves. If you've ever chosen love and paid the price for it, this story is for you. Comment below. Would you have walked away or stayed? And if you want more true-style emotional stories like this every week, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell. Because sometimes, the most powerful revenge is rebuilding.